It was just another Tuesday at the antique shop until a customer brought in a large leather-bound tome. He said he found it in his late grandfather's things. As far as he knew, the book had been in the family for generations. But the thing was, the man didn't know what the book was or what it even contained. And so he offered it up to the store owner, hoping he could find a buyer for it. The store owner took the book home that night, intending to look through it the next morning. That was when he noticed something strange. It seemed like the book was written in ancient language. He ran his fingers across its yellowed pages, which were filled with indecipherable symbols and sigils. There was no discernible pattern to the markings. They seemed random, yet there was something strangely mesmerizing about the symbols that made him want to keep reading them. He tried translating some of the text, but because of the strange language, he got nowhere. All he managed to figure out were the names of some of the people whose names were written in the margins. At first, he thought they were just part of some kind of incantation or curse. However, as he delved deeper into the book, he started to notice patterns in the handwriting. The names were being added one by one in an orderly fashion, and as he traced the lettering with his finger, he could feel the energy from the writing seeping into him. At first, he thought little of it, attributing it to the age of the book. However, the more he read, the more uneasy he became. He began researching the names he'd come across, discovering that most of them belonged to individuals who died within the last few decades. Some of them had perished under mysterious circumstances, while others had simply passed away in their sleep, seemingly of natural causes. What bothered him was that they all shared one commonality. Each of their deaths had occurred exactly one night after their names had appeared in the book. He thought it must be a coincidence, but as days turned into weeks, the coincidence continued. Every night he would discover a new name in the book, and the next day, without fail, that person would die. It was as though the book was predicting their demise. The bookseller tried ignoring the phenomenon, reasoning that it couldn't possibly affect him. But his resolve wavered when he came across a familiar surname in the book, his own. He couldn't believe it. Was the book somehow connected to him? Had it been following him all along? As time went on, the entries in the book became increasingly disturbing. Along with the names, there were now descriptions of how each person had died, written in the same eerie script. Some entries were detailed, describing the exact time and manner of death. Others were more cryptic, offering only vague hints. But despite their ambiguity, the writing took on a life of its own, becoming a tangible presence in the bookstore's life. It seemed as though the energy from the book was growing stronger with each passing day. One night, he heard scratching sounds coming from the book. At first, he dismissed it, thinking it was just his imagination. But then he began noticing small indentations on the pages as though something was pressing against them from the other side. It was then he realized that the book wasn't just containing the names and descriptions, it was actually writing itself. He watched in horror as letters formed on the page, spelling out his name. The room grew cold, and he felt a presence behind him. Paralyzed with fear, he couldn't turn around. He wanted to, but his body wouldn't move. The room was dark, but he could see the book clearly, its pages illuminated as if by an otherworldly light. The sight burned into his retinas, seared into his brain. When he finally managed to tear his eyes away from the book, he saw a figure standing in the corner of the room. It was tall and thin, with long, gnarled fingers and a face that was both ancient and grotesque. Its eyes burned with an unholy light, and its mouth was twisted into a perpetual snarl. The creature shuffled closer, its footsteps silent, its presence suffocating. The bookseller tried to scream, but no sound came out. His throat was constricted, his limbs heavy. He wanted to run, to hide, but he couldn't. He was frozen in place, trapped by an unseen force. The creature loomed over him, its hot, fetid breath washing over him. He could feel its icy fingers digging into his flesh, draining the warmth from his body. Then it opened its mouth and whispered in a voice that was both raspy and resonant. "Join us, join us, join us." With that, the creature lunged, and the last thing the bookseller saw was the glint of sharp, cruel teeth before everything went black. When the sun rose the next morning, the creature was gone, leaving behind only a faint sulfurous smell. In its place stood the bookcase, its pages open to the entry for the day, and scrawled across the top of the page were the words, "The End." Below it was a postscript written in a different hand, shaky and distressed. "Help me. He's coming for me." It was then the bookseller realized that the diary had claimed another victim, and as he read the name, his blood ran cold. It was his own name. Days turned into weeks, and the town moved on, oblivious to the horror that had unfolded within the antique shop. The new owner, unaware of the book's sinister history, organized the shelves, dusted the glass cabinets, and put the finishing touches on his first window display. As he did, he hummed a cheerful tune, excited to start his new business. But as the evening shadows lengthened and the shop prepared to close, the air grew heavy with dread. Suddenly, a piercing screech echoed through the empty store, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. The new owner froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't heard any customers enter, and the sound had come from the back room where he kept the old books. Curiosity and morbid fascination compelled him to investigate. He slowly approached the back room door, his hand hovering over the doorknob. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, illuminated only by a shaft of moonlight that sliced through a gap in the boarded-up window. The new owner's eyes struggled to pierce the gloom, searching for the source of the noise. That's when he saw it, lying on the floor in front of a bookshelf, a single leather-bound tome. Its pages were open, revealing strange symbols and writings that seemed to writhe and twist in the dim light. As he gazed upon the book, a sense of foreboding washed over him. It was the same book from before, the one that had caused so much havoc and misery, but how could it be here? He distinctly remembered placing it in the back room when he first arrived. Had it moved on its own? He cautiously approached the book, his mind racing. Was this just a cruel prank, a way for the previous owner to scare off the competition, or was there something more sinister at play? As he reached out to pick it up, he hesitated. Something inside him, some primal instinct, screamed at him to stay away. He picked up the book, and as his fingers brushed against the worn leather cover, a jolt of energy shot through him. It was as though the book itself was reacting to his touch. Startled, he dropped the book and stumbled back. Then he noticed something horrifying. The pages were filled with indecipherable symbols and writings, but one name stood out in particular. It was his name, scrawled in a shaky hand across the top of the page. Beneath it was a date, and it was today's date. His blood ran cold as he realized what this meant. The book wasn't just here by coincidence, it had come back for him. And as the full weight of this realization hit him, he felt a cold, unseen hand grip his heart. In the ensuing moments, his mind raced, trying to come up with a plan to escape the clutches of the ancient evil that had been unleashed. He knew he had to act fast. Frantically, he searched for a way to break the curse, consulting old grimoires and dusty scrolls, hoping to find some way to banish the entity that had taken up residence in his mind, but his efforts were in vain. The more he learned about the entity, the more he realized the depth of its power. It was a creature of immense power, one that fed on fear and despair. It had been slumbering for centuries, waiting for the right moment to strike, and now it had chosen him. As the days turned into nights, the entity grew stronger, its presence seeping into every aspect of his life. It whispered to him in his darkest moments, taunted him with images of his deepest fears. It made him question his sanity, driving him to the brink of madness. Yet even in his darkest hour, he refused to give up. He knew that if he could just hold on a little longer, he could find a way to defeat the entity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stumbled upon an ancient ritual, one that was said to be able to banish even the most powerful of entities. It was a dangerous ritual, one that required him to confront his fears head-on and emerge victorious. But he had no choice. He had to try. With renewed determination, he gathered the necessary components for the ritual, his hands shaking with anticipation. As he began chanting the words of power, the room began to shake. The entity sensed its demise approaching and lashed out with all its might. A fierce battle ensued, a clash between good and evil that shook the very foundations of the house. But in the end, the ritual was successful. The entity was banished, its presence receding into the darkness from which it had come. In the aftermath of the battle, he collapsed to his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had won, but the victory came at a great cost. The experience had taken a heavy toll on him, leaving him shaken and traumatized. He knew that he could never go back to his old life. He had seen too much, experienced too much for that, but instead of succumbing to despair, he chose to use his experience to help others. He became a healer, helping those who were lost in the darkness to find their way back to the light. He traveled the world, sharing his knowledge and wisdom, always aware of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. And so the tale of the haunted house became a legend, a warning to those who dared to enter the realm of the supernatural. For within those four walls, evil had thrived and only a broken man had been able to conquer it. Drop a comment and let me know if you liked this story. For more content, like and subscribe. See you at the next campfire.